Oh, wait. I think that means we're live. I hear an echo somewhere. It's very bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Live with the next.
We're totally live. Live with an echo.
Great.
All right.
All right. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Welcome to Suicide and Stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, we have a rating before we start.
Yeah.
We are rated R for
Bad words.
Bad words. Because we will say fuck a lot.
So many times.
So many.
Even when we try not to. Maybe,
Yeah.
I don't know what our guests are like as far as that, but at least two of us are going to say fuck a
I
lot.
would be willing to bet they have more practice behaving.
Yeah. I think it's a requirement of certain jobs, but apparently not mine. That's not true. I'm like better when I'm in the call center and stuff. Kind of. A lot of the time.
Like how you just keep working your
Sorry,
way
Bob,
down.
If you're watching, you don't say fuck a lot in the call center.
Okay, so we say fuck. I'm Des. I run Live Through This, which is a series of portraits and true stories of suicide attempt survivors across the U.S. And I do some other stuff that I don't want to talk about right now.
And I am Jess, and I work at Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners in Colorado. We're the providers of the statewide crisis and peer support line. And then I do general rabble-rousing in suicide prevention, suicidology.
General rabble-rousing.
Yeah, general rabble. I think that's the short way to talk about whatever I normally say. Yeah, I will let our guests introduce themselves.
Yes.
Well, Saxton, I work in a nonprofit community mental health clinic in kind of western rural Minnesota. Just graduated in August, so I'm excited to be done with school and kind of out there doing this thing, I guess. So, yeah, that's me. I guess a part of what got me and Katie on the show is I also previously co-hosted a podcast, Jedi Council, a podcast and a blog that was about very subtle product placement here. That was about disseminating mental health and even more broadly just psychology research and information. So, yeah.
And I'm Katie Gordon. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm a therapist in the health department. Research on eating disorders and suicidal behavior.
Love it.
Yeah.
Jess has the outline. She's going to do
I have the outline.
the organizing of our lives for the next hour. It's great.
I provide limited structure.
More than I have.
So we always like to start out by just talking about like what brought people to this part, what makes you interested in suicide or suicidology or suicide prevention, or all three. Maybe they have different reasons for different.
Go.
Very admittedly, I guess I probably a lot of credit for interest in the area of suicide prevention and understanding why suicide happens. So Katie was a professor in the department where I got. I was very fortunate to take a number of classes with her and learned a lot about her background and research related to suicide. And it was inspiring to see the kind of work that she had been involved with. And so as I progressed through graduate school, a lot of my early research was related to more kind of basic areas, trying to understand emotions and how do they influence us in different ways. And I got more interested in getting involved in more applied areas, including suicide prevention. So just kind of, I guess, riding coattails is maybe the best way to describe it. to just, so, like I said, just saw a lot of the really cool work that she was doing, foreshadowing a little bit of probably what she's going to say. And so I ended up doing my dissertation related to a specific component of a specific theory related to suicide. And Des, I was very fortunate and thankful to you because I was allowed and fortunate to collaborate with you a bit and use some of the content from the Live Through This vignettes that you've been developing as a part of my dissertation, which was really, really special and really important to me. In a small way where I could include lived experience in the work that I was doing. And in a lot of ways, I've moved out of research kind of settings now. And so in some ways, or in all ways, I guess, my dissertation was like the culmination of probably my research career. So it was really important, like I said, and really special to be able to use work that you've been doing and to contribute to a lot of the really neat things that Katie's been doing and just do something small but meaningful to me to contribute to that area. So that's the Spark Notes version of how I got kind of involved in that area.
Very good.
Yeah.
Back when I was a young undergrad at Florida State University, I started volunteering doing research in Thomas Joyner's lab with one of his grad students, and I started being really interested in eating disorders and depression. Had a lot of friends and relatives who had been affected by mental health and just really wanted to understand how to do better. Mm-hmm. I actually started out wanting to be a full-time therapist, but I got really interested in research once I started working in the lab, and then I ended up going to graduate school. Is there an echo? Do you want me to try the headphones?
It was fine. Keep talking, and we'll see.
Okay. Just give me a sign if I need to change something.
Okay.
So in graduate school, I ended up focusing more on suicide because I became aware from working with Dr. Joyner that there is just so much more that needs to be known and understood within that area, that it was understudied, that there was still a lot of stigma attached to suicide. And so I got really passionate about studying that. I continued to study eating disorder stuff, but I mostly got interested in suicide within that. So I ended up, after I graduated, was a professor and continued to do suicide research. And then just about a year ago, switched to doing a therapy job, like I mentioned. And so now most of the suicide prevention work that I try to do is either is direct clinical care and trying to write a little bit about it for the public too, when I can.
And Twitter.
Yes, I tweet a lot. That's my main, what I view as a contribution at this point.
I mean, you put out good stuff all the time, so.
Oh, thank you.
And it's accessible to people, right? So it's not just like living in an ivory tower somewhere. So I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I was going to say something and I forgot what it was. Yay. It's one of those days.
I have a question. Do you have any secrets or embarrassing stories about Thomas Joyner that you would like to share with me?
I will have to think about that and the implications for our relationship if I divulge any.
Yeah.
I have known Thomas for 20 years ago. I started working with him, so it's been a long time. None come to mind. He's a pretty, he's a private person. He's a warm person and he's a wonderful mentor, but not a lot of obvious embarrassing stories come to mind.
He never fell down and farted or anything?
He must have, but I don't recall.
I was not there for
All
that.
Right, well, we'll come back to it.
I mean, I've seen one of his yearbook photos from high school. It wasn't embarrassing. It was pretty cute, but
Oh. Well, I'm not interested in the cute fun times. So
I came here to talk shit.
Yeah. I'm just here to,
You're the worst.
aggressively seek out embarrassing stories about leaders in the field.
That should be our new highlight.
Not prepared.
So I'm sure that Thomas Joyner does not watch Suicide and stuff, so he wouldn't find out.
You never know. He did. When I saw him last time, he said that he had listened to Jedi Council.
No,
so
you
never know.
He lurks. That's my understanding.
I mean, I'm friends with him on Facebook, and I think he posted 6 years ago or something. So 6 years from now, we'll see. But so what I'm saying is, if you were scared to tell, he's probably not going to know.
That is a good point. I really am drawing a blank, though. I'm not just saying.
All right, that's all right. Okay, so like, tell us about Jedi Council. So I want to talk about eating disorders and rural suicide later. We'll get to that. But tell us about Jedi Council, because that ran for a long time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
3 years.
Yeah, it was. Should I jump in?
Yeah.
Sure. So Jedi Council was obviously something really near and dear to my heart and a very fun project. It really, the origin story for it is kind of interesting because how it started was me and Katie talking about things that we thought were funny and or interesting, like, oh, have you seen Star Wars? How about that Darth Vader character? He's pretty interesting, right? So, no. And we had a lot of these conversations, and I think one day said to each other, this is interesting. What people think this is interesting. And so then it turned into a blog where we would break down these fictional characters in kind of these pseudo-psychological evaluations in an attempt, like I kind of said before, to disseminate accurate, scientifically kind of relevant or validated information about mental health. And then eventually, I don't know exactly, correct me if I'm wrong, but we both said, I like podcasts, you like podcasts, let's try a podcast. And the very first podcast that we recorded, I look back and I shudder a little bit because it was recorded with like the voice record option on the microphone with the laptop speaker uploaded on YouTube. And people were very generous and graceful with us with that. And then it really took off into a lot of different things. We reviewed films, we covered a lot of TV series, a lot of characters. There's some social justice kind of oriented episodes, and there's a lot of really cool episodes just about psychological research, interviewing a lot of really interesting professionals or experts, people with interesting perspectives. And Katie deserves all the credit for that. She's for that part, she's got a knack for connecting with people that her networking strategy is unrivaled. So it was a very cool project.
I tweet at them.
Yeah.
That's what we do. Yeah.
And I say, wanna come on.
So that's really what it was. Many blog posts, some that, gosh, I mean, there's one about, Rick from Rick and Morty and one about Michael Scott from The Office that I couldn't even estimate how many hits some of those got. And a few of the podcast episodes were very popular as well. I for whatever reason, I have it in my mind, again, correct me if I'm wrong, we covered 13 Reasons Why, and that was such a buzz topic. And that really got a lot of attention. And I think we had some strong opinions about that. And I think Katie and I tend to be pretty balanced in how we approach things, but when that we came down pretty hard on one side of things, which was, I think, brought in new people who were kind of interested. So in a nutshell, that's really what it was. It was a podcast, it was a blog, we did live events and local conventions, and it was just really a cool way and an enterprise of dissemination, really.
I think 13 Reasons Why is the bane of my fucking existence.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It makes us so mad.
Mm-hmm.
No, talking about it makes me mad now.
I know.
Oh, for sure. That's relatable that you say that. We covered the first season, I think, in 3 or 4 full podcast episodes, more than any other series, I think.
Yeah.
And then when season 2 came out, I did not contribute because I actually just wouldn't watch it.
Yeah.
And so we recorded an episode where I listened to Katie and sounds shitty.
No.
Yep, bad. I didn't see it. But I still haven't watched season 2. So
I haven't watched season 3.
Yeah,
somehow
it's a bit much for me.
Still going. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll watch all of it. I love a shitty teen drama.
I get it.
And I love suicide content. I know you're not supposed to like it, but I do.
I get it.
So yeah,
I mean,
everything that's like that. But it's not good, right? So, we can say that's objectively not very good. There's acting. So, what do you think were the best things around impact of doing work like that? Because I think that sometimes you start out doing, you're like, we're just going to do this. And it seems very narrow and controlled. And then these things like expand. And then there's impact that you don't even know about or think about going in to doing work in that way. So I'm interested in what you think the impact of the show was.
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the things that stands out, it was always meaningful to me whenever anyone contacted us and told us that it meant something to them. But one message we got in particular was about someone who was in a crisis and actually in the hospital, and said that she was able to listen to some of the episodes and that it was comforting to her, and that meant a lot to me because I really didn't imagine that. I think, like Brandon said, it was kind of like something we both enjoyed, but the fact that someone else could feel understood or comforted by what we were saying meant a lot to me.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. I think at the core, the goal of it was always, this is fun for us to do. And I don't think when we started it, I mean, I don't want to speak for Olis, I didn't think or know if anyone would ever listen to any of it. Just so when people did start to listen and reach out, I mean, it was really cool. And I had a very kind of, it was kind of a goofy sort of experience at a local or a recent conference that I went to with, I was walking around with an old lab mate of mine and my former graduate school advisor. And in the course of just our walking, about 5 or 6 different people walked up who knew me from the show and just wanted to say, wow, that was really cool. We like that. And my advisor, who's this very kind of stoic Norwegian person, is just going, who are these people? Why are these people coming up who you don't know and talking to you? Why are you talking back to them? It's like, well, it's very kind of him to do that. That's very meaningful to me. He couldn't find around that. He's a very unusual very appreciative of him. He's a very dear person.
He's not going to watch the show, don't worry.
He's not going to watch the show.
I'm not worried.
Only because he's not on Facebook,
No,
not because it is a very good show. It's just not on social media.
Guys, I'm going to put it on YouTube. Just so you know.
Yeah.
Still a good chance I'll miss it. I just knowing him.
But like, if he did watch it, then what we would do is invite him to come on, right? That's the strategy.
Do we have any embarrassing stories about him?
Yeah.
That's true.
No, he in many ways, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, he's very similar to Thomas Joyner in that they have a very kind of similar, very calm, controlled approach to interacting with people. So I never did see him do anything embarrassing, and I worked with him I've known him for probably 8 or 9 years. Yeah, so sorry.
I feel like the people who work with me, even for a long time, have like or for a short time, have like 40 embarrassing stories.
I mean,
like, it's hard for me to walk into the office without falling. I trip over every cord. It's a call center, you know, like, yeah. So this will go differently if I have any guests who work for me on the show.
Yeah, we should ask
one
them
thing
about
I
it.
wanted to mention, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say Brandon mentioned that locally they have like little Comic Cons here, and we did a couple of those. Some with some severe room disorganization situations, but that was actually really interesting because there were a lot of people it wasn't in a psychology office. There were people like dressed up in full cosplay, and we were just talking about like Batman and stuff, and a lot of them were sharing personal mental health information, and many of them were kind of introverts, and like that was really cool. I almost feel like in a way they started their own conversation, but we got to be there for it. So like that was surprising to me too. That was fun.
I have to build on what Katie alluded to a little bit. The room situation. We were assigned to a certain room, and then someone who was local famous, I think, wanted that room, so they gave it to us. Then said, we're going to put you in this other unmarked room. There's a random door in a hallway. There was no indication that we would be in there. And throughout our whole 60 to 90 minute thing, someone would walk in about every 10 or 15 minutes. Who's in here? Oh, we've been looking for you for a half hour. We've been looking for you for an hour. So it was kind of special. People were like walking around trying to find this, and found us in what was very nearly a closet. And then because it was so unstructured, we couldn't do a talk because of people interrupting to no blame of their own. So it did just turn into a discussion where it's just like we moderated the discussion, the group led. It was very cool and frustrating in some ways because of certain organizers.
Yes.
So,
that was the last one we did, actually, but it wasn't their fault. I mean, the organizers, it was their fault. And if I knew their names, I would say it just to make this more interesting.
Yeah, I wish
but I don't remember.
Yeah, gotta name names.
Yeah.
Oh, so some people in the comments had a question about which side you fell.
Mhm.
Why?
makes sense. So we have to take a stand again. I'm out of practice now that we haven't recorded in a while.
You can just say like left or right, and then we can move on. I don't even know what that would mean.
So let me be very therapist-y, I guess, and put a qualifier that anyone can like whatever show they want, and if people found meaning in that program, I think that's very special and important to them, and I would never take that away from them. For me personally, I didn't care for the show very much for a lot of reasons. And if you
13
want,
approximately.
oh, we did come up with 13 reasons why we didn't like 13
That's
reasons
right.
why I had forgotten. That was clever. That was really clever.
Every scene Clay was in.
That's part of it for sure. And there are 4 hours of content on the internet if you want a long answer to this question.
Yeah.
Very ranty. But for me, it felt like it used the experience of suicide in a way that was a little bit cheap and made for kind of a not that engaging of a story for me. And there was just some problematic messaging, some blaming, that I'm trying to test my memory a little bit here. I feel like I've blocked some of it out. And I remember one thing I really didn't like was this school counselor kind of character, who I remember particularly kind of problematic, in his approach to how he responded. And the other part really was just that. Was there any characters who were just like, oh, that's the good person of the story to kind of help it along? I don't know that there were, and again, that's maybe a values-based statement, my own perceptions, and maybe there were, I just don't remember. So that was some of my thoughts. I was not pro 13 Reasons Why. I was, and I think a lot of the people who, maybe not a lot, there were plenty of people who reached out to me or who I interacted with that said, I really liked it. This started a lot of conversations. This got people talking. It got people thinking, and that's fine. And I, like I said, I wouldn't take that away from anyone. It just wasn't for me.
I didn't care for the major revenge motive that she had. I thought that was I didn't like that at all. I thought that was really kind of perpetuating some ideas about a common reason that people might kill themselves, to kind of force people to really see their perspective and their concerns. So I didn't like that, and the counselor was a big thing, because I think if a teenager watching it and sees that she went to him to talk about a sexual assault, and he's basically like, if you don't want to report it, there's nothing I can do. I would just hate that deter anyone from reaching out for help. Of course, these things can happen. That's true, but I don't know.
Like a lot, I think. They have a lot.
Yeah.
So, and it's not like kids don't have that experience.
Right.
I didn't like that it was like all of this stuff, terrible things happening to women so that a white boy could learn a lesson.
Yeah.
Because we've already read that book 100 times.
Have we?
I don't know. Yeah, there's a million books about white women being punished. So
Jess, that was sarcasm. You know that.
Yeah. So anyway, okay, we can move on from 13 Reasons Why, because none of us actually wanted to talk about it.
I agree with you, though. I think that's the message. Maybe you'll think twice next time. Meanwhile, there's all these horrible things over and over again. Ugh.
But also, who can maintain a crisis long enough to make 13 tapes? Fucking deliver them.
Seriously.
Give me a realistic premise, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
That would require quite a flow chart.
Seriously.
Oh my
gosh.
For sure.
Well, okay.
Jess is not having this.
Do we want to talk about eating disorders?
Sure.
Eating disorders or beef?
Anything?
Where are we at in your timeline?
Let's do beef first. Eating disorders, rural stuff.
Did you guys bring your beef?
Beef.
We did. We're here in North Dakota. We're an agreeable people. And we did try to think of some things that bug us.
Very good. I like this.
Reasons why.
Yeah.
Got my awful beef corner video playing. All right. Okay, we're back.
I love the beef corner video.
I do too. It's so bad. Go for it.
Who wants to start with beef?
Man. What do you think?
Do you want me to go?
Sure.
Yes,
okay.
nice people with accents first.
Yeah.
So I think that I guess two things came to mind. One is maybe actually people outside the field of suicidology. I feel like the thing that bothers me is over focus on social media as a cause of suicide.
Yeah.
My gosh. And they're like, it's the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. And when you look at the research, it's like it's not compelling that you can point to it. And if there is a link, it's a pretty small percentage. Of course, there are people that are negatively affected by anything. But overall, as an explanation, I just feel like that we could spend a lot more attention and discussion and focus on. I feel like it is kind of something that you two actually, that you talk a lot about that I appreciate. It's a focus on some kind of like, put your phone away versus doing other structural things like fix healthcare and stop discrimination and stuff like that. So it bugs me. So that's my beef.
Didn't we get a new article about social media this week or something? Am I misremembering that?
Don't care.
It seems like a new one. It seems like there's a new one, and every time I'm like, my favorite one is actually by Brian Resnick at Vox, because he did, I don't know if you saw, but he did a great review, and it was like, first of all, we don't know a ton of it, and what we do know, there are some methodological issues, and also it's and we need to talk about some of these other things. So that one I like. I almost want to tweet it out every time I see another social media op-ed or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good one. I liked that one.
I fucking love social media. I'm sick of people talking shit about it. Like most of my friends.
Saved my.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stop researching that, people.
It's
Make something interesting.
I don't know if I'm overextending at all about this, but in some ways, if I can maybe lump social media and video games a little bit now, it's like I'm wearing my Dungeons and Dragons shirt, and I'm thinking of early satanic panic Dungeons and Dragons. I feel like we're having something like that right now for social media / video, where it's like, look, it wasn't D&D, it wasn't rock and roll. It's definitely got to be the social media and the video games then. And again, like I said, I don't know if I'm overextending that, but it really feels that way to me, and it's just like such a boring narrative that I don't get. It's just, I suppose it's just our proneness as humans to want to point our finger to this is we can just fix this, it's all going to get better. And it's never, ever, ever, ever going to be that easy. There's not one thing that we can change or fix that's going to fix all the difficulties that we're facing. And so I understand why people want to get that way, but I don't understand why we continue to perpetuate this idea that social media / video games are really the bane of our existence.
You forgot two really big ones, Brandon. Doom and Marilyn Manson.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. So it's cyclical for sure.
Did you ever meet Marilyn Manson since you were in Miami? Because I was in Coral Springs, and his the bassist Twiggy Ramirez, his brother Wes, did go to my school and I was on one of their little covers. So that was a big deal then.
No, I was.
I've seen Marilyn
Side note.
in a show before.
You what?
I saw Marilyn Manson play music once, but I did not. Also, I'm really excited that someone brought up Dungeons and Dragons, but I'm not going to go into that whole I'm gonna hold it down.
I was gonna.
I'm actually sitting in. Brandon ran a very good Dungeons and Dragons campaign in this very chair as a dungeon master.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
it was fun.
I was
play
gonna.
Dungeons and Dragons with like a bunch of people that are kind of suicidal, and then one person who really likes living, which is a constant joke in our D&D group.
Sure.
Thursday nights.
Uh,
I get the updates at like midnight. She's like, my girlfriend blew some shit up, and I have no idea how to play this game.
That's the makings of a podcast.
Yeah.
I was thinking we should bring in one of those therapists who's also like a dungeon master.
Ooh, yeah.
I need to be into that. What else?
Yep.
What are your beefs, Jess?
That's fine.
Huh?
Is it my beefs or is it their beef still?
Oh, wait, are we still on? Wait, I don't know.
You still have beefs?
Are there more beefs?
I mean, there can be a couple more beefs.
You do a couple more beefs. We love beef corner.
Yes.
Let me throw a. This is not a new beef at all. This is something that's been talked about on social media a lot. But it is this idea that, and again, this is something that everyone's going to go, oh yeah, duh. But it's this idea that we say so much, maybe as a society or maybe as a field, boy, if you're struggling, just get help. And now that I work in the field, I recognize that, gosh, it's not that easy to just get help. Even, I work in a pretty small town. About 13,000 people is where I currently spend most of my time. And there's not that many therapists in that town. So just say to these people who are in these, and maybe I'm branching the rural kind of topic a little bit early, but to just say, boy, just go get some help. It really isn't that easy. So I think that it's, I don't know, it in some ways puts the burden on the people who are struggling by saying, if it's not going well, you got to go in. Well, there might be wait times. There might be financial barriers. There might be practical barriers related to I can't transport myself, or I can't get to the town where the therapist is, or telehealth isn't available, or my copay is too high, or there's a 2-month wait list and I'm in crisis today. And so I've got a little beef about that. And it is not, the problem isn't people aren't getting help as much as it is there's not help for everyone who needs it.
Yep.
And by the time you get there, also the provider might not know how to help you.
Yeah.
Might not. Probably doesn't know how to help you if you're suicidal. So
That's a good time.
That's a piece that nobody ever tells you about.
Absolutely.
That's such a huge problem that it's unbelievable to me every time I see like the people who have studied and they're like, this percentage don't know, don't use, frontline recommendations for suicidal thoughts and behavior. And I mean, I believe it, but you're right. There's like a whole obstacle course to even get to the care.
God, I talk to journalists a lot who have no idea that that so many clinicians out there have no idea what they're doing. And it's like, we need to talk about that, like maybe a little more. What does it mean if you can't find the help?
Yeah.
No, absolutely. It's since moving or graduating and getting more involved in practice, I've gotten a lot more interested in that part of it too. And in some ways, there are situations where I can sympathize with the providers in these rural areas too, because the dissemination of that information isn't always there to get to them too. And so it's just like everything else, right? There's so many pieces that it's like, where do we start to fix this? I don't know. It's a big deal.
Yeah, it's pretty impossible.
And one that's not enough. And it's not sufficiently summed up by saying, just go get help.
Yeah.
It's that easy.
Yeah.
Well, it really isn't. Not for a lot of people.
Joelle's here.
I see. Joelle is here. I have two beefs.
Okay.
They're both more personal than anything typically. Kind of not first time, I guess. So first, an experience in forced treatment where I was sexually assaulted, And I tried to get away, but I was in restraints and my hip is messed up. So when that gets bad, that's like what I think about. And I have to like wake up to it. And yesterday I woke up to like really, really severe pain. And there's kind of nothing to do about it except like live with it and stuff. And that it makes you like think about all the things and how fucked up it is. And that there's still people who get to like have this kind of power over other people. So all of that is happening. So that's a beef just with like systems that coercion is so present and there's like so much done to protect coercion, but so little done to protect the people who are victimized by it. And so few conversations about that in like any kind of mainstream setting. So that's one beef, is that sucks. And that it's just still going on, right? There's no, I don't feel like things that was 15 years ago, and I don't feel like there's been any movement in that space about fixing those kinds of concerns. My other beef is that, so I have a plenary session at AAS where I'm talking about white supremacy culture and suicidology. And there's a bunch of other things that are focused on equity at AAS, our big suicidology conference. And like an older white guy who's been real involved in suicidology in the past is very angry about it and sent an email to our listserv, either accidentally or maybe not, about his concerns about how we've strayed so far from research and blah, blah, blah.
Fuck that guy.
And if you look at the plenary sessions, they're so bad, and the founders of this work would be rolling in their graves, and like, I know that's fine, maybe they would. But, you know, like, I think that's a thing that happens, and sometimes that's good. But I think it's been interesting because we got everyone kind of piled onto this argument in the listserv, and my reaction to it was just that, like, oh, so we're having this moment where like people with power are being challenged in a way that's difficult for them, and they're responding poorly to it by like lashing out at everyone. So my beef is with him personally, I guess. So Lanny Berman, he used to be the executive director of the American Association of Suicidology too. And there were a lot of people who responded, lots of people kind of in. But the bigger that I had, I didn't get any response from people who are like, community look like. There's agreement around that like, field should be challenging anything, that we should be free from critique. And I think this is really pervasive in the field of suicidology, that people should be, that like somehow our work should be above critique. And there's a lot of problems in the work in the field. And like the biggest one being like, we haven't actually impacted the suicide rates. So we don't have a lot to kind of stand on there. And I would really appreciate seeing more involvement, I think, from people who are in positions of power within the field in setting a precedent for what it means to accept critique in a thoughtful and meaningful way, and to treat this like a field that has rigor. Because otherwise, if you don't have critique, there's no rigor.
Well, we love to talk about the rigor that we have.
Yes.
We love to talk about it.
Those are my beefs. They were downers.
I have the same beef. My beef is with Lanny fucking Berman. Fuck that guy. Fuck him a lot. What was I going to say? So that email sucked. A lot of people did reply. That was cool. And then what happened was someone came in and said, actually, can you tell me about the research article that we were originally talking about before Lanny sent this weird email? And then a bunch of other like white guys responded, and they were just talking about the research as if nothing had ever happened. And that was infuriating, on top of the fact that that leading researchers and people with power in the field were not responding. However, I do have to say, ever since the concerned suicidologist email, people are noisier than they were. You know, there is more backing than there was. I used to get, anytime, you know, I would show up and stir some shit, I'd get a ton of emails behind the scenes that were like, you go. And it's like, okay, but I can't keep taking the fall. Like, that's not fair to me, because it does affect my career and my ability to make money for my family if everybody thinks I'm an asshole. Because I'm pretty nice. Like, I don't suck, I have to say. So, yeah, my beef is with Lanny. Can't wait to see him in person and give him the side eye and then walk away. That's all I got.
I don't care if he doesn't come.
I mean, he shouldn't.
Like, he doesn't have to come. If it's not a conference you want to come to, stay home. You don't have to.
Yeah.
You've been to like 20 other ones.
I mean, look, I've heard lots of shitty things about the state that Lanny Berman left AAS in, so I'm just going to set that there and walk away.
Yeah. Well,
yay, Colleen.
so those are my big beefs. Do you all have more beefs?
Oh, I might be beefed up
Yeah.
of my personal beefs.
All right.
That was
I'm
a
not
good
that
steak. It's delicious.
Very good. And we're really sticking to our time schedule very well tonight, which is not our typical approach to things. We always mess up. Okay, so let's talk. I work in Colorado, and this is interesting to me. We have like barren areas, and then we have that are called. Do you have a category called frontier?
I've never heard that before.
Word. Well,
we have ones that are called frontier, which means like, oh, it's even worse out there. As far as accessing services, our Department of Public Health uses those. I bet you have the same kinds of places, but but maybe you just don't call them that.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about some of the stuff you're doing in that area.
Sure. So I'm mostly based in Fargo, which is a relatively big city for North Dakota, and but I have people drive in actually we do telehealth, like Brandon mentioned, but we also have people that drive in from a couple hours away to get therapy, and
What happened?
Do we lose sound?
Do I sound okay?
Oh, now you do.
There you go.
Okay. So some of since I work in women's and people I'm treating their partners, there are some struggles when they have. Are you getting that noise too, or is that just us?
I'm not getting.
I'm hearing that noise too.
Okay.
Plug those headphones in.
Okay, we're gonna try it out. It's been a long time unknotting them, so.
Yeah, you got to use them then. That's a lot of effort.
That's right. Oh man, apparently I didn't completely unknot. I think it might be on that side.
My sister says that Fargo is an underrated place to visit. She has had a good time there.
I agree.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool city, and I've been here for 10 years, and I think it's growing more and more. Like, there's a good art scene, there's pretty good. I think it's too cold, but it's gotten better in other ways. Let's try this.
I'm gonna have to start fishing around for somebody to bring me in for a talk in Fargo now.
Oh yeah, well I would love that.
I'm gonna go to
happy to host either of you.
Yes, I've got a talk in South Dakota in September, so I'll get to one of the Dakotas.
Yeah. Not far.
Cool. Where in South Dakota?
Sioux Falls.
Oh, that's not that far.
Really?
Okay. Well, maybe I'll check in with you. Maybe I might be able to get down there. I like it. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Sioux Falls is pretty. It's Have you been there before?
No.
The falls are pretty. Yeah. It's nice. So since I work with a lot of women who are they're pregnant or during the postpartum period, and they have partners often who are farmers, and they when they have to work very long shifts, long hours, and they often end up feeling isolated. But they're kind of in a tough position in the small towns because I think that have very close family members that are nearby, but if their family members are not supportive, that doesn't help things. Sometimes in small towns, they feel like everybody knows their business, and so they're reluctant to reach out for help, and they feel a lot of shame about their mental health problems. And so I feel like they end up getting this combination of kind of isolation and shame, and then on top of it, many of them have easily accessible, and also if they do have to pills and things like that, the emergency services sometimes are not nearby, or they can't get to them quick enough. So those are the main concerns that I see, and a lot of the work and talking about suicidal thoughts is trying to build and support decreased shame, and often trying to bring their partners in or family members, or find groups where they can talk to other people. And this is where actually some of them find a lot of comfort on social media, because they're in rural areas, but they can talk to other moms who are struggling with postpartum depression, or their partners are farmers. They can find a group for whatever they're going through, which I think has been helpful. So that's mostly what I've observed. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think that probably echoing a lot of the same sentiments. I think with guns, for sure, I think that's a big part of it. I know we've, in the clinic where I work, we've had some trainings and a lot of frank conversations about, hey, it's uncomfortable to ask someone, do you have a gun at home? But if we're talking about someone who might be at risk for suicide, it's absolutely vital, if you want to be thorough in helping that person examine and prepare to be safe in the event that they experience suicide again in the future. So that's certainly a big part of it. And I think the other part that is a perspective that I've been dealing with in some of my work is just getting some men to be comfortable opening up and just saying, yeah, I am having these struggles.
Your sound's going wonky, guys.
Uh-oh.
I don't think this helps.
I don't think it's helping now.
No.
We're almost done.
Wait.
Just go without him. It's fine.
It feels better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Is it okay now?
It's good.
Yeah.
Tell us about the men.
Good.
We have to switch back and forth,
Yeah, we just have to unplug it, plug it back in once in a while. No problem. What's nice about this is my back. My back wasn't going to probably be able to last 13 minutes, which is really problematic given my age. So I think a part of it for me has been some surprise and just trying to really work with a lot of the men in these areas to say, hey, guys, not to divert this into a toxic masculinity kind of conversation, but hey, we have to learn how to say, I'm struggling with this. I have emotions, and they are very intense and distressing for me right now. And it's incredible to me in some of the smaller areas where I work, some of those barriers that maybe is just a little bit different from what Katie sees with the specific population she sees. Just something that I can maybe add to that too. The other part too, like Katie already pointed out, is some of the just worry that people are going to be involved. I know the town where I work is about an hour from Fargo, but it's not very uncommon for people that I know to travel to Fargo for their therapy appointments instead, because they don't want people in town to see their car at the therapist office. And so all of a sudden, when you're talking about people who maybe have to miss work to attend appointments, and that's already a burden for some people, depending on their financial and employment situation or family childcare situation, and all of a sudden, we're not just missing 1 hour a week, but now we're missing up to 3 hours a week, given an hour of travel both directions. It's not sustainable for people to continue to engage in care at the level that might be required for them to keep them safe or help them, just to get the help that they need. Really. I'm sort of belaboring the point that I think I've kind of got there. So it's just some of those issues that I don't know that I was totally aware of until, just getting more involved in the practice side of things.
You're right that my patients sometimes will not ask they don't want to ask someone to watch their kids while they drive in. They schedule specifically. They don't want to lie, but they make up. It's painful to see that. It really is, because they internalize a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. We like struggle to get a ton of callers even from some of those areas. And they ask questions sometimes about like, well, where are you located? And we're located in an urban area because otherwise you would never staff a crisis line. But just those kinds of questions come up a lot. We've done a lot of work training our team, like using people with lived experience in those areas to train our team, and like develop specific sort of skill sets for working with folks in that area. In Colorado, like 80% of people have a gun in their homes, so and that's like everywhere. So it doesn't matter how urban you are. So I can really relate to that idea. And even like I've been to other like crisis kind of training things where people are like, you shouldn't send mobile crisis to places if there's a gun in the home. If we're like, well, mobile crisis would never go anywhere. Right. All the mobile crisis providers have guns in their homes too. Mm-hmm. So it's just interesting, like so many of the ways that I think the recommendations for how to do suicide interventions are constructed or around expectations that are not true in those settings, mm-hmm. even though like a lot of the United States is not urban, right? So that would be a big gap that we could really work on, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I like some of the work I've seen that Robert Bohr and others have done to work through spiritual communities, because there are a lot, churches are a big socializing thing, and if the churches, I feel like, could get on board on decreasing stigma and reaching out, I think that is a powerful way that people could feel okay about talking about mental health. And so I really appreciate the work he does to kind of spread the word about that.
Yeah, I think peer support is a great option as well, which is right. That's really what's happening in churches too, in a lot of spaces, but more formal peer support, especially because like it's not easy to cultivate like a group of trained providers in those areas. We have all kinds of programs where we're trying to like we'll pay all your student loans, but you have to go spend 2 years living in a rural or frontier community, and people are still like, no. Mm-hmm. So anyway, if you want all your student loans paid off and you're a provider, you should come to Colorado and do that. But only if you're a good one and you know how to work with suicidal people. Probably you could also go to North Dakota and do the same thing. But yeah, I think there's an opportunity to utilize peer support in a more formal way. But then we would have to like fund peer support in a similar way that we fund like clinical interventions, which is not where we are at the moment.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think that I actually didn't understand much about peer support as an option and how that was funded, but there's some reasonable funding in North Dakota for peer support, and it seems like when people can get connected that way, I think that in a way is more effective, or something that certain people are more willing to do than to go to a doctor. But also there are more people, I think, that also find meaning doing that if they're able to support peers. And I think that can be part of their own work. So yeah, I agree. That's something I don't know much about, but I've learned more about in the past year. And it just seems like a very powerful way to expand intervention and care.
Mm. Yeah. We have a question from Jess's sister who likes to stir the shit. Jenny.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Jenny would like to know what everyone thinks about means restriction and guns, and also red flag laws, and wonders if that's a question for Beef Corner, but it's not.
I mean, another time.
Yeah.
Really strong laws. I think that's discrimination, straight up. Like, even if it might have a positive outcome, like saying you are in a protected class and because of that, we're going to restrict your access to something, that's fucking illegal. Anyway, I know other people have different perspectives on that. you're allowed to disagree with me.
Only one time.
I don't feel like I don't feel like I know enough about it to have as much of an informed opinion, except I get very nervous where people are determining people don't have access to things due to mental health issues, unless there has to be some like very clear extreme level to reach that point, I think, for it to be a red flag. I think that means restriction is vital. I think it's a really important part of keeping people safe. But, I always, at least in my work, really try to do that collaboratively, rather than I've certainly never taken away something from someone. I'm not saying that's never an appropriate thing, especially with maybe younger people or something like that. But I tend to lean much more on. I worry about restricting freedom. I would be very cautious about that. But I also don't know enough about it to fully commit to an answer.
No.
But that's where I lean.
Mm.
I agree.
I don't want to date. I worry about things like a database or registry of people who have mental health problems. I don't like that at all. I think that can be, and all of these things we look at trade-offs, and I worry a lot about the harm that could be done from that.
Yeah, I feel like we frequently go into things in our field without like thinking about if the juice is worth the squeeze or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's because we're not centering the experience of the people who are going to be impacted in those discussions.
Mm-hmm.
So then everyone's just like, oh yeah, that would be great. And like, go through. And then like stuff gets implemented that's just really, really problematic for people and has a terrible impact on people's lives. And then we're also not allowed to critique that because we're back to beef corner.
Right.
So then we also don't critique that. And then it just sits there and is the same all the time.
And then we sound angry and emotional.
Also,
Mm-hmm.
like if we were going to take away guns, we could just take them away, like all together.
Mm-hmm.
Just equitably take away guns if we're going to do it.
Yeah, right. That's a different story than saying like we have the precision to pinpoint it and predict exactly who needs to have them taken away in a lot of cases, right?
We do not.
Yeah, that's putting a whole lot of faith in like assessments that don't have any like research to back up how effective they are.
Mm-hmm.
Not at that level anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, we're not anywhere near that.
No. Sometimes we can predict lifetime risk pretty okay sometimes for some people.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes.
But,
occasionally.
Yeah.
Here and there.
Yeah.
What else? We got 3 minutes. 2 minutes.
Yeah.
We did this.
Does anyone have final big statements, sweeping generalizations, anything that you want to?
Cliffhangers.
Yeah.
Oh.
Embarrassing stories about leaders in our field,
Definitely.
We're there.
I think one thing that I've been thinking a lot about, the last blog post I wrote on my website is just, to me, it's really important to view suicide as a public health crisis and through that lens. And a lot of my thoughts on that have actually, my sister's background is in public health and anthropology, and we've had a lot of heated discussions about psychology versus other ways of viewing things. And I think ultimately it's deepened my understanding. And I appreciate what you do with this podcast and in your writing and talk about looking at root causes and at systems and looking at how we can't wait till base our things on like a system of like you identify an individual who has a problem and then you intervene. You have to look before then, you have to prevent things. And my sister, one of her most compelling points, if she's watching, she'll be happy to hear this, was she just gave the example of how in Flint, Michigan, that clearly the best thing to do, you have to help the people who've already been exposed to lead, but you also have to put safeguards in place for all the things that allow lead in the water in the first place. And to me, that's absolutely where suicide prevention has to go. We have to go much further upstream. And I think that it just becomes more and more urgent to me the more that the suicide rates climb, and the more that I learn from information that you two share and things like that. So that wasn't as coherent as I hoped, but that's what's on my mind.
It's cool to hear that we're not just like screaming into the void, because that's how we imagine what we're doing.
Kinda.
I'm listening closely. Reading.
What else? Brandon, you got anything?
Mine was just going to be a shameless plug for all of the content that the two of you do, because I also think it's all very worthwhile. And I'm not in the world of content creation very much right now, so I continue to be really impressed and appreciative for time doing such important work to disseminate this information, to start conversations, to help people learn about things that are obviously very important and aren't always easy to find accurate, meaningful, thoughtful information about. So that's all I have. That's my broad sweeping generalization, is to just continue to listen to this show and to engage with the work that the two of you are doing.
Thank you for saying nice things.
I feel like Fel our fourth person that's on here, because I saw the background of a baby.
Oh no. my workaround with the fourth little tile is my phone, and someone texted me and it fucked everything up. So I was like,
So one of the things I was not expecting you all to say nice stuff about us.
Nope.
Here's a weird fact about me that we can end our podcast with, which is that when people compliment me, I totally dissociate. Which is a weird habit that I've developed that I'm working on. But hey, I like held it together super well for the compliments. So anyway,
you're so brave.
Thank you all. That's nice. Shut up, Jess. You're so brave. Okay. Well, that joke never gets old.
Nope. Not to me anyway.
Thank you both so much. This has been really glad that you want to come on and share stuff that you're working on. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us on.
Thanks for being here. All right, I'm going to hit the finish button, and eventually we'll know that it's over now.
Yeah.
Bye!
Bye.